Thank you, Mr. Robinet, for the introduction. Dear colleagues, distinguished guests, fellow speakers, I feel very honored to have the opportunity of speaking in front of you today in this very important global event to which we all came from all different corners of the world to discuss issues of paramount importance in the global fight to end impunity. First and foremost, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to the organizers of this event and personally to Mr. Leon Saltiel for inviting me to share my thoughts in this event. Thank you. By way of a brief introduction, let me say the following about myself. As you have heard, my name is Daniel Mekonnen. I originate from Eritrea, a country suffering from some of the worst types of human rights violations in the world. For us, in the Eritrean human rights cause, the opportunity of speaking in this global forum comes as one of very rare instances in which the dire state of human rights in Eritrea can be brought to a broader spotlight with amplified attention. To those who do not know more about Eritrea, let me briefly provide you with a very short summary of the post-independence history of Eritrea. My country achieved its de facto independence in 1991 after winning a long and bitter war of liberation against neighboring country Ethiopia. It was officially recognized by the international community as an independent state in 1993. Up to 1997, Eritrea experienced a relatively peaceful transition towards a much anticipated democratic system of governance. Things changed dramatically when the country became embroiled in a fresh border conflict again with its neighboring country, Ethiopia. This so-called border conflict was fought bitterly between May 1998 and May 2000, and after that, the two countries or the two governments signed a ceasefire, and legally speaking, I can say the conflict was resolved by a number of follow-up binding agreements and arbitral awards that were signed and rendered in the following 2 years. However, a number of residual matters related to the border conflict remain unresolved due to the obstinacy of the governments in both countries, resulting in a no war, no peace situation for the last 14 years. In this context, the government in Eritrea became extremely repressive, justifying its brutal repression under the pretext of the so-called unresolved border conflict with Ethiopia. Nevertheless, everything said and done by the Eritrean government under the pretext of the so-called border conflict or stalemate with Ethiopia is morally and legally reprehensible. The government in Eritrea has now become one of the most repressive regimes in the world, with alarming levels of human rights violations, comparable only with very few instances throughout the globe. It was in this context that I left Eritrea in 2001, and except for a brief return of about 3 months between 2002 and 2003, I remain in exile ever since. Since the time I left Eritrea, I have worked continuously in defense of human rights in Eritrea, and this includes my involvement in a number of initiatives such as the formation and leadership of the Eritrean Movement for Democracy and Human Rights, EMDHR, which was established back in South Africa when I was there, and which was perhaps the most progressive youth movement of its time, including of the post-independence era. At least by accounts dating back to the time when EMDHR was established. As a founding member of the Eritrean Law Society, the only professional association of Eritreans unfortunately working from exile, I have also played my part in exposing grave human rights violations committed by the Eritrean government. I do this in different mechanisms, such as by submitting alternative reports or shadow reports to different treaty monitoring bodies of the United Nations here in Geneva and other organs of the African Union. I also mobilized Eritrean diaspora communities to stand up firmly against tyranny and condemn unequivocally gross human rights violations committed back in Eritrea. One of the most recent and most important examples in this regard is my involvement in the leadership and organization of a historic mass rally of pro-human rights Eritreans and their allies that took place on June 26, 2015, here in Geneva. Organized under the banner of End Impunity in Eritrea, the Geneva mass rally attracted more than 5,000 pro-democracy Eritreans and their supporters from all over Europe and the rest of the world. With a strong message of condemning gross human rights violations in Eritrea, the mass rally turned out to be the biggest such event to be organized in a third country since the advent of the Eritrean government to power in 1991. Implemented without any financial or material support from any government or donor agency, the Geneva mass rally was a resounding success, entirely planned and executed by diaspora-based Eritrean grassroots movements and activists, all of whom served on a non-remunerated voluntary capacity. Serving as chairperson of the 7-member coordinating committee of that event, or the committee which organized the historic mass rally of Geneva, was one of the most gratifying achievements in my entire professional and activist life. Staged in front of the United Nations office in Geneva, the mass rally of June 2015 was deliberately planned to coincide with the time when a United Nations mandated Commission of Inquiry on Eritrea was presenting a groundbreaking report to the Human Rights Council in Geneva. The Commission, of course, said horrendous violations, including a possible situation of crimes against humanity, are taking place in Eritrea. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, crimes against humanity is one of the 3 major categories of crimes under international law that may fall under the exclusive jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court in The Hague. Ladies and gentlemen, I share my experience with you today without forgetting the many intimidations and serious death threats I regularly receive from supporters of the Eritrean government in different mediums of communication, of course. The most recent example is one which I received in June 2015 while I was preparing for the Geneva demonstration, and which is still currently under investigation by the relevant authorities in Geneva, including by the Department of Police of the city. As gratifying as it is, my work on human rights, what I call cause lawyering, is at times very challenging. But who in the world has ever got their rights for free? After all, rights are earned through a long and bitter struggle. That's why they are so precious. So, whatever it takes, I will continue my fight for the establishment of an Eritrean political system based on the rule of law. And I'm sure, with the help of all peace-loving people of the world, people like you, this cause will ultimately prevail. I also very much hope that one day I will be able to recount this speech in the capital city of Eritrea, in Asmara, in the ashes of tyranny. Ladies and gentlemen, I was born and raised in Eritrea, but I have also studied, worked, and lived in as many as 9 different countries, which include Ethiopia, South Africa, Belgium, the Netherlands, Ireland, Germany, the United Kingdom, Norway, and Switzerland. In relation to my work on human rights, I have also traveled to many other places throughout the world with varying lengths of stay. I can therefore fairly consider myself a world citizen. By a world citizen, I mean a peaceful and peace-making individual, both in daily life and contacts with others, and whose inner urge or strong impulse is geared towards creating a fairer world in which every individual shall live a fair and dignified life. So, true to my commitment to world citizenship, I try to relate everything I do to all fellow human beings, regardless of their respective ethnic, religious, political, or other backgrounds. Thus, my commitment to human rights emanates not only from the sad state of affairs in my country of origin, but also from the values I mentioned above, which are deeply entrenched in the person in me. Colleagues and fellow speakers, I am presenting this speech at a time when the world is becoming extremely dangerous to many vulnerable groups, such as refugees and asylum seekers. Speaking as someone who finds himself in an exile of more than 13 years, and as a person who has suffered a lot due to immigration-related injustice, the plight of refugees and asylum seekers is one of the most pressing issues, and one that comes closer to my heart. I would be therefore remiss if I conclude my speech without saying a few words about this peculiar global challenge. So, by way of concluding, I would like to highlight the urgent need to democratize some extremely suffocating aspects of European immigration rules. When we speak about repressive regimes that are committing gross human rights violations in geographic areas far from places such as this forum, it should be without forgetting other forms of injustice that are taking place before our own eyes in so close a distance. Only then will we be able to build a world free from all forms of prejudice and injustice. This world belongs to all of us, equally and without any discrimination. When we say this, we shall say it with words and deeds. Thank you for listening.